All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6:01. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. Let's please take roll.
Commissioner Lade,
Here.
Commissioner Diaz,
Here.
Commissioner Bray,
Here.
Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Kreiner, Commissioner Hardy,
Here.
Chair Vane.
Here. Thank you. Next, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone, please stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, with liberty for all. I will now read the procedures for the meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and electronically.
The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on an item, use the raise hand function on Zoom. To avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The 3 lights on the podium next to the microphone will indicate the amount of time remaining for the speaker. The green light will be turned on when the speaker begins. Yellow light will come on with the soft bell ring when 1 minute is remaining. The speaker should be completing the testimony by the time the red light comes on with the final bell indicating time has expired. All in-person public testimony must be presented to the commission at the podium. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. Please note that we have Commissioner Kreiner and we also have Commissioner Wagner in attendance. We'll go ahead and start today's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Good evening, Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission. Israel Trejo with the Planning and Development Department. There are no changes to the agenda. I would like to point out that staff did leave a package of comments that we received yesterday, did leave that on the dais for you all. We also have some packets here to my left, the left-hand side for the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any commissions have any changes to the agenda? I see none. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. None. Motion passes. Next, we'll go ahead and we'll go to reports by the commissioners. Do we have any reports by the commissioners? I see none. We'll move to new matters. This is for ID 231106, consideration of conditional use permit application P22-03146. We'll have staff conduct a presentation.
Chair Vang,
Yes.
could you ask if any of the commissioners have anything that they need to report out on this item, please?
Okay. On this item, ID 231106, do we have any commissioners who need to recuse or report any?
Yes, I need to recuse myself from this item.
All right, perfect. Let's please make note that Commissioner Wagner will recuse herself. We'll go ahead and inform her once this item is done. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Thomas Avich with the Planning and Development Department. The item for consideration tonight is conditional use permit application P22-03146 and its related environmental finding. The proposed project pertains to a 1.3 acre parcel located south of West Bullard Avenue between North Van Ness Boulevard and North Faulkner Avenue. West Bullard Avenue is a 4-lane arterial street, which is classified as a street type designed to serve high-volume inter- and intra-city traffic and to act as a distributor between freeways, other arterials, and major traffic generators. West Morris Avenue is located south of the adjacent property, which runs eastward to North Faulkner Avenue. And then West Morris is classified as a local street. The subject property is currently developed by an existing single-family home. Existing single-family homes are located north and east of the project site. The property west of the project site is vacant. And Malik Elementary School is located south on the opposite side of West Morris Avenue. The subject property is planned and zoned for residential low-density land uses. The surrounding land uses to the north, east, and west are also planned and zoned for low-density residential land uses, and the property south is planned and zoned for public institutional. The RS2 zoning permits a residential care facility subject to approval of a conditional use permit. Similarly, other use types are allowed other than single-family homes in the RS2 district, such as parks, churches, and schools. As I mentioned, the conditional use permit is proposing the adaptive reuse of an existing residence to be used as a new residential care facility to be constructed in 2 phases. Here is a picture of the site plan for the property, showing the phases of the project. The first phase would be remodeling the existing 3,310 square foot single-family residence to a 4,500 square foot building. And then phase 2 would be 2 additional buildings for a total of 9,011 square feet. As a residential care facility, each building would provide 18 beds. The buildings would provide acute care services, nursing care, and complex respiratory care to on-site residents. Additional on-site and off-site improvements are proposed, including but not limited to 5 drive approaches, 26 parking stalls, landscaping, and then curb, gutter, and sidewalks. This is a proposed facade of the remodeled building. On November 14th, 2022, the Council District 2 Project Review Committee reviewed and recommended approval with the recommendation that the applicant conduct a neighborhood meeting. On January 5th, the neighborhood meeting was held. 5 members of the public attended, and the applicant discussed and answered questions. Per the applicant, there was no negative comments we received at that meeting. On January 26th, the Planning Department, we mailed a notice of intent to take action to property owners within 1,000 feet. 30 responses were received, and then 8 requests for notices of the action taken. There are several concerns raised in the responses to that mailed notice. There was concerns that the potential traffic, parking, noise, and light impacts from the proposed project would negatively impact the neighborhood. There was opposition to a commercial facility in a residential neighborhood. There was claims that the proposed use does not fit the definition of a residential care facility and wasn't permitted. There were also claims that a traffic impact study and environmental impact study were required. And there were also claims that the CEQA review would be piecemealed. In review of some of the concerns raised, the project is subject to requirements of the Fresno Municipal Code regarding the design to access to and from public streets, in regard to the parking requirements, and then also limitations on noise and light with the requirements of the code. The traffic impacts were analyzed in accordance with the city's standard procedures of review and the general plan, and were determined not to require a traffic impact study. Traffic impacts were also analyzed under vehicle miles traveled analysis, which is the standard of review for transportation impacts under CEQA, of the California Environmental Quality Act. Quantitative analysis of the produced trips did not identify a significant environmental impact regarding transportation. In regard to the opposition to the commercial facility in a residential neighborhood, As I previously mentioned, and also in the report, the RS2 zoning classification permits a range of uses beyond just single-family homes. Community religious assembly facilities, parks, school facilities, or other uses permitted in an RS2 district. As identified in the required findings, a residential care facility is to be considered as a conditional use permit. And as I identified in the report, the residential care facility general will be the most appropriate use classification. In regards to the requests for traffic impact studies, the project would be estimated to generate about 140 daily passenger trips, 10 a.m. peak hour trips, and 13 p.m. peak hour trips. And based on the requirements of the general plan, if a traffic impact study would only be required if it exceeded 200 daily trips. And so this fell short of that. Okay. There were, in regards to the statement about an environmental impact study required, there was no evidence in the record that demonstrates a significant environmental impact would occur. Therefore, an EIR wasn't required. And then, in regards to the comments about the piecemealing, the project included references to a parcel split in the future to divide the 3 proposed buildings into 3 different parcels. They wouldn't leave any kind of leftover land that would be for an undetermined use. Therefore, it would still be considered under this review of the project. On February 23rd, the applicant conducted an additional meeting with respondents to the mailed notice to go over more details of the project. On June 2nd, the project was approved. On June 5th and June 14th, appeal letters were received. The appeals generally cited concerns that were raised in the prior comments. And then there was another concern about that the project didn't meet the required density. In response to analyzing those comments, as I had mentioned, the general plan permits uses beyond single-family homes, and the residential, there's no minimum density required for, it wouldn't be applied to a church, a park, or a school. Therefore, the density requirements wouldn't apply to this. As determined, based on the staff report, the recommended adoption of the environmental assessment is recommended. And then it's also recommended to deny the appeal and uphold the action to approve the project, as the required findings for a conditional use permit can be made. And then also, as was also mentioned, there were some comment letters received after the agenda was posted, but prior to this meeting, and so that was a packet that was handed out. Okay. The applicant is available to answer more questions, answer any questions, and present the project.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any question for the city staff from the commission? Go ahead, Commissioner.
What is the definition of a residential care facility?
Mm-hmm.
What does that include?
Yeah, so it's included in the staff report on page.
I did read that, but it was last week, and
Yeah, no problem. So that'll be on page 5.
could
And so,
you read
and then
that?
I can go and read it. So a residential care facility, it's a facility that are licensed by the state of California to provide living accommodations and 24-hour, primarily non-medical care and supervision for persons in need of personal services, supervision, protection, or assistance for sustaining the activities of daily living. Living accommodations are shared living quarters with or without separate kitchen or bathroom facilities for each room or unit. The classification includes facilities that are operated for profit, as well as those operated by public or not-for-profit institutions, including hospices, nursing homes, convalescent facilities, and group homes for minors, persons with disabilities, and people in recovery from alcohol or drug addictions. This use classification excludes transitional housing and social service facilities. And then the code differentiates between facilities with 6 or more residents or 6 less. So this facility would be considered residential care general because it's more than 6 people.
So the applicant says that their team of medical professionals will provide acute care services, skilled nursing care, and complex respiratory care. So how is that primarily non-medical?
So the project they're proposing, they're covering a lot more services than that, like dietary,
Right.
because basically it's not just it's not like a hospital. It's more like a permanent, and it's supposed to be residential in nature. And so while they do consider the nursing care just like a nursing home would, it basically covers a whole lot more uses than that.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to find out is, are they providing that acute care?
They are.
At this facility?
Mhm.
So that's medical care.
Correct.
And then, is there, they have parking, are there like, is this a parcel that is going to have parking lot lights in the evenings, or is it?
They are proposing some parking lighting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? I see none. May we please have the applicant conduct a presentation, please?
Hi, my name is Cesar Rodriguez. From CR Consulting Group. We're the consultants for the group. They've asked me to come up here and kind of give you a presentation of the project. I met, the name of the group is Infinity Living, and part of that group is Astrid Del Vera, Brian Whelan, Jason Andrade, Irvin Marquez, Nathan Miller, Patrick Miller, and Larry Massa. I've been working with this group for over a year trying to get the project approved through the planning department. And right now I want to thank the planning department for doing a great job helping us through this whole process. They've been wonderful. Thank you. As Tom has already explained to you guys, this is a two-phase project. The first phase is going to be the remodel of the existing home. We complied with every aspect of the project. We worked closely with the planning department on every part of the design. When it comes to circulation of the property, circulation for the fire department, lighting, enough security, access, egress, and pretty much what we do for any facility like this. This project consists of 3 residential buildings, as you know. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have as far as, any police, issues, fire department issues, or anything like that as far as, circulation, as far as the design is concerned.
Question for you. Once this facility is up and running, what are the visiting hours?
I believe visitor hours are usually during the day. They stop at a certain point before the night.
Okay. Does Sierra Care operate any other facilities throughout the city of Fresno?
I believe that a couple of the members actually have other facilities at other places, but I'm not familiar with them. I couldn't answer that question. They can come up and answer that for you.
All right. Do you have any of the other members in the audience or on Zoom too?
Yeah, they're all here.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Is there any of the other members that can actually elaborate a little bit more than with information that you have given us?
Yeah, I think in regards to how they operate, yes.
Yes.
We have one gentleman that is directly involved that does this on a day-to-day basis, and I believe that's Mr. Mesa.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Does that answer your question?
Yes, can you just elaborate a
Yeah,
little bit more
there's
about the
some-
project?
Can you give your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Larry Mesa. Previously owner of Congregate Living out of Modesto, California. It was a 12-bed facility. I think the misconception here is the RSC. I think you had a question of a residential care facility. A Congregate Living, totally different. It's designed for critical acute patients, which is, in theory, a Medi-Cal-based program. It's for people in need. It's 24-hour care. Mostly from my background, I'm a DME marketing representative, so I do marketing on the side. And it's going to be a 24-hour care, but I want to differentiate you guys from the RSC. RSC is ambulatory patients that walk around, can get up, can move around, can drive. Buses pick them up, take them from here to there. This is a concentration on acute, primarily patients with tracheostomies or on a ventilator.
Does that mean that the patients would not be walking? They
Correct.
would just be in
Correct.
bed?
Our ideal patient would be bedbound,
And,
not being able to move.
and again, can you answer the hours of operation?
24-hour care.
24 hours.
In 2 or 3 shifts, we're yet to determine that. But I know traffic is one of the major issues here, which in our first phase, you got to keep in mind marketing and getting the bedrooms filled up to 12 to 18 patients takes a little bit of time. So therefore, there could be setups from 1 day of 12 patients, and it could take us up to 12 months to get 12 patients.
What would be your visiting policy that you have?
Visiting
in
policy
place?
is 8 to 5. After 5 o'clock, there'd be no visiting hours.
Do we have any other questions from the commission?
And one more thing for the shift, a shift could require only 4 people at one time, meaning there'd be 4 cars.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions for me?
No, we're okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to go ahead and go to the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment in favor? So this is in favor. If you are in the chambers, please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes. Any of the members of the public? I see none. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak in favor on Zoom?
None at this time.
Okay. We'll go ahead and now go to members of the public who would like to speak in opposition. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Wanger. I live at 2330 West Roberts Avenue, which is directly south of Malik Elementary. So I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. I left for 20 years. I came back. It's been entirely residential. I've submitted a packet of documents. There's a detailed map from Herndon to Barstow. There are no properties in this very low-density zoned area with 3 residences on them, 15,000 square feet, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. None. No commercial operations. This is not an adaptive reuse as the city planning department has described it in its findings. Their entire theory is based on an RCFE, a residential care facility. The residents of those facilities can perform daily activities. They are licensed by the state. That is not what the neighborhood was given in the application materials. We were given a description of a subacute skilled nursing medical facility. ambulances, delivery trucks, lighting, 24/7. It's a full-on commercial medical operation in a low-density, single-family residential neighborhood. This is a massive change and alteration to our neighborhood. The traffic implications off Bullard Avenue, it is a highly trafficked thoroughfare to Highway 41, morning and evening. They're talking about ingress and egress directly where the elementary school drops off buses, morning, midday, and late day, and where parents drop off. And then their third point of ingress, egress is through a residential, private, undeveloped subdivision right now. The application and the materials, the traffic study, appear to be based on a single building. Not 3 buildings, not 54 residents, not staff. He just talked about 4 staff members. That's for 1 building. Everybody's focused on a single building and the adaptive reuse of a residence. These investors purchased a residence and they now seek to transform it into a commercial operation with 3 buildings, no yard. It's going to be parking lot, lights, and full-time operation. I have also submitted, as part of my packet, a statement from Mr. Smitkamp, who is the resident directly to the east of this property. He has lived in this property since the 70s. The lighting from the parking lot will directly impact his backyard. I encourage you all to study his letter. He is the person most directly impacted by this project.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner, go ahead. He has a question for
Thank you very much. I'm trying to visual this. I'm looking at your packet.
Yep.
It looks like a block down the road's a commercial shopping center. How does that impact you guys?
So Bullard, I grew up, I was born in 1968 in this neighborhood. It was the Roberts Fig property from Bullard all the way across Van Ness. And so Bullard and West has developed very well thought out shopping center. So there was a 4-corner shopping center right there.
How far is that from here?
From here, it's a city block down from Faulkner. So this property sits between Faulkner and Van Ness, right? The shopping center you're talking about is 1 city block over, but it is buffered by a ponding basin and by Rue Saint Michel, a PUD development that's extremely thoughtful, well planned out, so you have buffers before you get to Faulkner.
Thank you.
Yes.
Question 2. I know you mentioned Mr. Smitkamp. Is he not present tonight?
He is traveling tonight, and so that's why he submitted the letter that he did yesterday, but he summarized his thoughts and views on it.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in opposition? Please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Dr. Chelsea Juarez. I'm a resident of the neighborhood 2216 West Roberts. My concern is the communication regarding the medical questioning, and I appreciated Planning Commissioner Bray's questions because I do not feel that the individuals who put forth this application have provided the community with consistent information regarding the medical care of the facility, as the previous commenter mentioned. So I personally have quite a bit of concern, namely that we have non-ambulatory individuals who are going to be being cared for by 4 staff members, and I feel as though the concerns, medical concerns, about how the neighborhood is going to be impacted have not been properly presented. And I very much appreciated your questioning because I feel like that is being downplayed, and I would very much appreciate for the commission to very much go back into the specific wording about how the neighborhood zoning is going to be changed. These people are patients, non-ambulatory patients who are ventilated and are going to require 24-hour care. That is medical care, a medical facility. 24-hour care, they cannot do anything for themselves. And anything that happens for them, they're going to be cared for primarily by CNAs. And anything that happens to them, they're going to have to be transported by ambulance 24 hours a day in a residential neighborhood to a hospital. So I am deeply concerned about that. It is not a proper location for such a facility.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, was there questions?
No. Thank you, I appreciate it. Good evening, sir. Go ahead and please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Dr. John Gary, 2361 West Celeste, not too far from Malik School. We've lived there for quite a while. It's a nice residential area. I am a surgeon, and my colleague Eric Lemker is also a surgeon. We both teach residents in the surgery department here at CRMC, and we both do almost all of our surgery there. We take care of all these patients. We both trained in trauma. These patients that are being placed in this facility are ICU-type patients. They are not ambulatory patients that would be at, let's say, the Armenian home in the nursing care section. There are plenty of areas in this city that have vacant land, vacant properties that could be utilized, especially down right where we are now, right where we take care of patients across the street, which would be closer to the facility here. This will require 24 hours of care, lighting, deliveries, ambulances. Patients will have end-of-life care, therefore families will be visiting at the end of their life. These are issues that really impact hospital-type situations and ICU-type situations. So you're going to have commercial, it's a commercial operation, you're going to have commercial HVAC, you're going to have plenty of activity. You're going to have more deliveries, and you're going to have all the facility or all the activities that are required for keeping this active 24 hours a day. It's not 8 to 5. We know that these patients, we've taken care of these patients before when we were doing trauma ourselves. These are patients that have had motorcycle accidents, motor vehicle accidents, people that are on life support basically, and they are not mobile. So I really beg of you to think realistically. You've always wanted to have more facilities downtown. We are proponents of the downtown area because we do our work at community. There's plenty of facilities, there's plenty of space around here to have such a facility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Eric Lemker, 2217 West Roberts. As Dr. Gary mentioned, I'm also a surgeon downtown. This is a medical facility. There's no way to sugarcoat that. These patients are subacute patients, trach-dependent patients. They need 24-hour observation and care. If something were to happen, it's generally going to be emergency level care, ambulances to the hospital. End-of-life care doesn't happen from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If something, if patient were not expected to survive and it was kind of an end-of-life situation, that would be something that family would be called whatever time of day it was. So this is not what it was billed to us. This is a medical facility. I don't think there's any other way to classify it.
Dr. Eric, did you participate in the meetings held by the applicant too?
So I did participate in one of the meetings. I don't remember the date. I do remember that there were probably at least four times the number of people there that evening at Malik, and it was generally very contentious.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in opposition? Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, miss.
Hi, I'm Krista Wanger. I live at 2330 West Roberts Avenue. I'm married to Andrew, who was up earlier. I just wanted to mention that the neighborhood itself, the neighbors are not in support of this project. The way that they're talking about accessing the buildings from Bullard, we all think is going to be very problematic. It's a horrible, horrible stretch of Bullard that if you're coming off Faulkner already, I have 2 new drivers and I always tell them you cannot turn unless it's a green light. I mean, there are cars zooming down there. So if you can imagine that coming out of this business area would be right in the middle of the zoom from Van Ness to Faulkner. That's not going to be good. In the event that that doesn't work for these workers and the people there, they're going to come through the back end, which is on just in front of Malik. That's where all the drive-through, the parents dropping off kids, picking up kids, the children in the neighborhood riding their bikes, people jogging through there, walking their dogs through there. It will be a gigantic disruption. So I just wanted to be clear about that. This is a neighborhood area, a quiet little pocket, and this is going to bring a lot of traffic and business and bodies and people that could be somewhere else.
Thank you, miss. Go ahead. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Victor. Last name is Zaitsev. I live at 2216 West Roberts Avenue. I oppose to this, and my argument is this, is that there is already a lot of traffic on Bullard throughout the daytime. I usually come from work around 4 or 5 o'clock, and that's one of the times of that facility operates, is already mentioned, and it's already busy. It's partially busy due to the grocery store that it actually, the Save Mart that is located. So people also do the jogging, walking. There's a park nearby, and it's just going to add more onto already existing traffic. And yes, that's that. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in opposition? Go ahead. That's fine. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Hi, I'm actually not in opposition. I'm one of the applicants. My name is Irvin Marquez. I just wanted to speak. I'm a respiratory therapist. And
Ms. Marquez, is it okay if, so you're part of the whole applicant group? Okay. What I'll do is I'll allow the public to speak first, and then I'll go ahead and bring it back to the applicant for you guys to speak, okay?
Sounds good, thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Do we have any other individuals? All right, we'll go ahead and go to Zoom. Do we have any individuals on Zoom? Please use the raise hand function.
Okay. William?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
This is William Podolsky. I'm also a physician. I agree completely with the comments of the other 3 doctors that this does not meet the definition of a residential care facility because it is a medical facility. It is basically a combination of a nursing home and an ICU. Everyone in there, or at least most of the people in there, are probably going to be on respirators. Most of them are totally non-mobile. They may have other tubes, feeding tubes, everything else. This is the sort of care that is required for people that are dependent on a respirator, on a ventilator. They can't breathe on their own in many cases. They certainly can't do anything else on their own. And it's just totally not the definition of a residential care facility. I mean, to call this a residential facility is pretty much such as if you wanted to build a morgue and to call it a residential cooling facility. It's not. This is not a residential care facility. It is an intensive medical care facility, probably best to be built close to an acute care hospital where people could be transferred easily, rather than in the midst of a very residential neighborhood. Therefore, I am very opposed to this. I don't know if I gave my location, it's 6072 North Sequoia. So we exit from Sequoia directly onto Bullard, right across from the facility. Thank you, but I want to state again my opposition to this program because it does not meet the definition of a residential care facility. It is a medical facility.
Thank you, sir. Do we have the next speaker?
That's all I have.
Okay. We'll go ahead and, again, I'll go back out to the audience in here. Do we have any individuals who would like to speak in opposition? All right, I'm going to close the public comment section. The applicants, if you guys can, please approach the podium, address some of these concerns that the public do have, especially the definition of residential care facility, if you can go more in depth. Please also state your name and address.
My name is Irvin Marquez. My address is 7846 North Vista Avenue in Fresno. So a residential care facility is described as for patients that are 80 or years older. The reason why we have this facility is I work with a lot of patients with motor neuron disease, like ALS, muscular dystrophy, and a lot of them would like that home environment. And so a lot of these patients, they're stable. They have to get trached, and so their family members are taking care of them, but they need that extra care. And that's the reason why we looked into this, because a lot of the patients are getting shipped out to San Jose, Modesto, and the families have to travel, their families have to travel hours just to see them. And the hours are typically, again, 8 to 5 for visiting hours. So a lot of these patients are actually pretty stable. They're trached. A lot of them aren't trach dependent. They're just trach just to help manage their airway or to keep the airway clear so they can get suctioned. There's a nursing staff there. There's a registered nurse. We have LVN, and then we have the CNAs, or patient care technicians, which are there just to make sure that they're clean, that they're changed, that if they need help getting up. But typically we have a registered nurse, we have a medical director that oversees everything.
Commissioner Hart, do you have a question, or?
Not for him, but I have questions for staff when you're finished.
Okay. Do we have, go ahead.
May I ask why this particular area was chosen for this?
Well, the reason why was we have, one of my partners lives near the area, and, that home's been vacant. And so we looked into it, and again, we looked at different locations. We had a spot in Modesto, which we ran, and it was in a resident area. Lighting was there in the evening, but it was dim. It was dim lighting. And we just caught our eye. We looked, the state stated that in order to be a congregate facility, it had to be a residential home. And so that's why we looked, we noticed that home, and that's why we chose that.
Mr. Marquez, one of the comments made by the public is their concern about traffic. Can you make any comments to that?
I can't make any promises that, we're not going to call emergency if it's going to happen. Traffic, we're going to try to, again, we're going to minimize the visiting hours. Typically, a lot of these patients are there, and we only have like one or two, again, from my experience from the congregate facility in Modesto, we didn't have a lot of visitors. The patients were just there. We have one or two over the weekend. Mainly the weekends, that's when they come and visit. It's typically not during the week.
Question for you too. Were you a part of the neighborhood meetings or?
I was on one of the first ones. The other ones I couldn't make because I was working.
Okay. Another issue that the public brought up too is the misinformation. Can you address that comment?
Again, I wasn't there, so I would like one of my partners to talk about
Yeah,
that.
that's fine. If they can feel free to approach the podium and
Okay.
address that issue too.
Okay.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Marquez before one of his partners address us?
Can you guys elaborate on how many meetings you had, whoever's going to come up?
Excuse me?
How many outreach meetings you guys had with the community? Can you guys,
I
I think someone else is coming.
Yeah.
Brian Whelan, 1440 Morris. I didn't intend to talk, but I just figured I would just step up to address the chairman's question. We had two meetings. The second meeting, as one of the prior persons suggested, was contentious. There wasn't misinformation that was presented, but there was frustration because I think that some of the members received, or some of the community members received notice of the second meeting, but not the first meeting. And in addition to that, there was frustration that was voiced with respect to their perception about traffic and also their perception about what the rules and regulations were. And so there were differences of opinions as to that. And then fundamentally, some people were opposed to the idea generally. It was a pretty contentious meeting, but towards the conclusion of it, the partners went throughout and introduced themselves and tried to be good stewards of the community. And I also pointed out at that meeting that I live pretty close myself. I live off of Morris and Fruit, and catty corner to my house is actually a congregate care facility, which during COVID, I believe, had 12 people present. And those were also individuals that were similarly bed-bound, and the amount of traffic associated with that was pretty de minimis. In fact, I didn't even notice it until at a later point when we were doing our study to see other conjugate care facilities that were similar in the area. We located this one that happened to be my next door neighbor, and so I was talking about that too. But there was contentious opposition, but at the end, I think that people were very civil in both camps. Did you have any more questions, Chairman Bing?
I don't. Thank you, sir. Let me ask the commission if they have any questions for you. Do we have any questions? I see none. Do we have any of the other applicants who would like to speak or address any of the concerns that the public brought up?
I think at this point we'll submit on the papers, and we would also just point out that some of the distinctions that are being made with respect to the classification of the facilities, these are all issues that we raised directly with the Planning Commission and also with the city's attorneys. There was never any non-disclosure of exactly what we were doing. And so there's a term of art associated with the code section, and that code section applies precisely to what we're doing. And that's why the Planning Commission, we've worked hand in glove with them for the last, I would say, 8 months, pretty directly, making sure that this is something that would comply with the use for this land. And so we would submit that your commission should please uphold the hard work that the Planning Commission has gone in.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
I appreciate it. Can we have staff? I believe Commissioner Hardy has questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Couple questions, I'll go in order, but how does the state license, how does staff look at the state license? And one other question I have is how is it going to be reviewed under state law?
Good evening, Commissioners. Philip Segrist, Planning Manager. So based on the proposed use, the operations, staff determined that the proposed use would most appropriately be classified as a residential care facility general. And furthermore, California Health and Safety Code section guidelines require that congregate living health facilities with 6 or more people shall be subject to a conditional use permit requirements of the city in which it's located in. So that's why, regardless of if you found a different appropriate use we could classify it as, state law still requires the local jurisdiction, City of Fresno, to process it as a conditional use permit.
Thank you. That answers and the second question's if this body wants to deny the director's decision, we have to find findings. I just wanted to remind our commission of this.
Correct, yes. The commission would need to amend the findings that staff made to not support it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Bray?
I'm still confused about the designation of it as residential care. From what I understood, what I read, that's primarily non-medical. This seems to be primarily medical. So I'm still confused by that.
I mean, I guess I could take
there.
a stab at it, and I don't think the primary non-medical, medical procedures, surgeries, stuff of that nature would not be occurring at the location. Is medical aid with nurses being there? Yes, just like any skilled nursing facility or what could I call it?
So a tracheotomy and a ventilator is not
Yeah.
considered a medical procedure?
Well, correct me, Commissioner. I don't think they'd be doing those procedures there.
I'm probably not skilled or certified to
That-
speak on
I'm
Well, I
behalf
mean,
of
that's
that.
a good question to ask the applicant. Are they going to be
Yeah.
doing, because that would answer the question
Good point.
if they're doing the procedures there versus if they're doing them at the hospital.
Well,
the
can we,
applicant come up
yeah,
with-
can we have the applicant please approach the podium and state your name, address for the record, and
If they can just stay up there, that'd be great.
Don't go.
Irvin Marquez, 7846 North Vista Avenue in Fresno. We're not doing any tracheostomies there. Patients are coming in that are already trached. So they're coming from home. Because the misconception is all these patients that get trached at the hospital have to go to a nursing facility. This is, a lot of our patients are actually going home because they have their care providers there to take care of them, to suction, to take care of their trachs. They're taught how to do that before they go home. We're not doing any type of surgeries there. If patients need emergency care, then we'll call. But no, there's no procedures there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you. Do we have any questions
I
for?
do, sir.
Yeah, go.
Sir, sorry.
Marquez, Mr. Marquez.
You're getting a good workout, bro. Sorry. My question to you is there, I know you probably can't give me a full, a good percentage, but just an overall, are we looking at hospice? Are we looking at comfort of life? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally get it.
My mind is, I'm looking at different residential facilities that are not dealing with the medical side of it, are more seen as comfort care or convalescent home, but that is not what this is because of the trachs. Are we looking at comfort care? Are we looking at hospice more?
If a patient is on a ventilator, typically hospice, because I also work for a local hospice company here, they don't allow the patient to be on a vent. It's not considered end of life because they have something mechanical breathing for them. So no, it's not there's not really hospice care there. Again, because the patients are trached, they're on a ventilator, they have a device breathing for them.
And they will stay there until family makes a decision?
Until their family decides, okay, you know, this patient, let's just go ahead and bring him home.
For hospice?
They're done, then they'll go to hospice, either the Heinz Hospice Home.
Okay.
Am I supposed to say Heinz? No?
I understand what you're
like
saying.
hospice
Hospice, right.
or anywhere, yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Hardy, you have a question? Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Do we have any more questions for city staff or? Okay. I'll go ahead and close all comments. My apologies, but all public comments have been closed. We're going to go ahead and bring this back to the commission. And do we have any comments or motion?
I mean, I'd like to begin. I'm having a hard time doing my little research up here to find a finding not to go against director's recommendations. So I'm going to go ahead and approve staff's recommendation.
Well, so we have a motion, but before we take a second, I do want to make a comment too. I think it's a difficult issue. You know, I'm hearing different sides of it where, you know, you're hearing that we don't want this in our area. There's other areas in town that might be better for the facility, downtown area. And then I'm hearing these testimony from the heroes of our community, these physicians and these doctors who make a really big impact in our community too. To me, I don't feel comfortable making any kind of decision. I just want to make sure we get some more clarification on the true definition of residential care facility before I make any kind of decision on this. But we do have a motion by Commissioner Hardy. Do we have a second? I see none. Do we have any new motions?
I think we should continue this, and I would like to see the applicant and the public come together. It brings to mind when the Marjorie Mason facility was brought before us, and it was a pretty large facility in a residential neighborhood right on Sierra, a busy street, and I really appreciated that the neighbors and the applicant came together and came up with a plan that was good for the community, because it sounds to me like if people are having to travel to other cities when their families are in this kind of a situation, that's not okay. And if it could have been downtown, why isn't it? That's a thought I have. So I just think we need to continue it. I think the applicant and the residents need to come to some kind of agreement. This is a pitiful thing to be arguing about. We're talking about very sick people, and it's pitiful that we're having this conversation. And so I would hope that the neighbors would get together in the spirit of the people did for Marjorie Mason Center and look at what's best for the community. I also believe, no one's really talked about it, but I don't think there should be any access off of, in front of Malik. I've dropped my kids off, not at that school, but it's terrible, and I don't believe there should be any access there. So I would support continuing this, and let's look at the humanity of things. So.
Is that a motion?
I think it is. There, I made a motion.
Okay, do we have a, do you want to choose a date that you want to choose a date that we're going to revisit this, a date certain, or do you want to push it?
I would ask the director for reasonable, what do you think a reasonable date would be?
Well, I would recommend either August 16th or the first meeting in September. I don't think it could come back on August 2nd, so.
Let's say the first meeting in September gives them plenty of time to get together and think about this.
Israel or Philip, what's the date so that we have a date certain on the record?
September 6th.
Thank you, Janice. September 6th would be the date certain.
September 6th. And can we also get a, just like a definition on that residential care facility, if we can, please? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would like to ask, and I appreciate everyone coming forward and speaking their concerns. It did sound like they purchased one property, correct me if I'm wrong, and plan on putting 2 more properties. And just from my point of view, I think that's where the lines get blurred, because there's already one existing property there. And now we're talking about potentially 2 more properties. And I believe it's a 1,500 or 15,000 square foot lot. And that's really tight to be in a community where there's homes that are sometimes as big as an acre with all the traffic that's already there. So maybe consider to the applicant a change in business structure or something more accommodating, like Commissioner said as well. So maybe that is something that everyone can come to terms with in terms of the business plan and the business strategy. I do see the public side as well as the business side, so just my opinion.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Commissioner Bray. Do we have a second?
I second.
We'll go ahead and second that. Let's go ahead and take roll, please.
Commissioner Lade,
Yes, I second.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bray,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy, Chair Vang.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and push that to September 6th, right? September 6th. Okay. Definitely encourage the applicant, once you guys leave this meeting, exchange numbers and just encourage you guys to have that communication before the next meeting. Thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry, when you were making announcements, I have to recuse from item 1D 23111.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay. On your way out, can you go
I'm
ahead
going
and...
to leave. I will not be back since that's the last item.
That's fine. Can you go ahead and, can you get Commissioner Wagner to come back?
Oh, yes, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is going to be ID 231111. Let's go ahead and have staff conduct a presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Good evening, Chair Vang, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Ling, and I am with the Planning and Development Department. Tonight, you will be taking consideration of the subject plan amendment and rezone application P22-04389, development permit application P22-02377.
Can we go ahead and, let's put a pause for now until Commissioner Wagner gets back?
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. Go ahead, continue. My apologies.
Good evening, Chair Vang, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Ling, and I am with the Planning and Development Department. Tonight, you'll be taking consideration of the subject plan amendment and rezone application P22-04389, development permit application P22-02376, and the related environmental assessment. The application is composed of 4 parts. The plan amendment application requests authorization to amend the Fresno General Plan and the McCain Community Plan to change the plan land use designation for the subject properties from low density to medium high density residential. The rezone application requests authorization to amend the official zoning map of the city of Fresno to rezone the 4.39 acre subject property from RS1 single family extremely low density to RM1 multifamily medium high density zone district. The development permit application requests authorization to construct a 64-unit, 2-story multifamily residential development, which will include a community building. And the related environmental assessment, which is a mitigated negative declaration for the proposed project. The project site is located on the east side of North Armstrong Avenue between East Clinton and East Shields Avenue. The project site is currently vacant and is in an area generally surrounded by existing residential land uses, including single-family residential homes to the north, east, and west, and directly to the south is vacant land. The property is currently zoned as RS1 and is surrounded by RS1, RS4, and RS5 zoning. According to the Fresno General Plan, the existing extreme low-density residential land use is intended to provide single-family residential detached housing with densities of 1 to 3.5 units per acre. The subject property is 4.39 acres, therefore would support a minimum density of 4 units and a maximum of 15 units if developed with single-family homes. The rezone application will rezone the subject property from RS1 to RM1 zoning. The medium-high density residential land use classification is intended for neighborhood with a mix of single-family residents, townhomes, garden apartments, and multi-family units. This land use accommodates densities from 12 to 16 units per acre overall. Based on the subject property being 4.39 acres, under the proposed medium high density residential designation, the parcel will support 52 to 70 units. The proposed 64-unit multifamily residential development would include 8 two-story buildings totaling to 81,000 square feet, a 2,000 square foot leasing and manager's office, private and common open space totaling to 40,700 square feet. The project site is required to have 106 parking stalls. Currently, 124 parking stalls are proposed. In addition, there's also going to be a new driver approach along North Armstrong Avenue. There will also be a pool, 3 trash enclosures, landscaping, curb and gutter, and sidewalks. In addition, the project meets all required setback requirements in the RM1 zone district. On June 14, 2022, the applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting, which was held at the multipurpose room at Roger O. Raz Elementary School, located at 3463 North Armstrong Avenue. No community members were present at the meeting. These are some images of the elevations. On July 7, 2023, a notice for a planning commission public hearing was mailed to the property owners within 1,000 feet of the subject property. The proposed project is consistent with several established goals, policies, and objectives of the general plan, as it is proposing infill development of a multifamily housing project on a vacant land within city limits. The project will increase the diversity and intensity of housing types in the area and is centered by schools and parks within a walking distance. The exact references of the general plan policies are located within the staff report. The proposed project is consistent with the intent of SB 330 as it is utilizing vacant land for infill development at an increased density. Due to the low inventory of housing in the state, SB 330 encourages the development of housing to keep up with its demand. Based upon the evaluation contained in this report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission take the following action to recommend adoption to the City Council of the environmental assessment, recommend approval to the City Council of the plan amendment application, rezone application, and a development permit application. This concludes staff presentation. I am open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions from the commission? Go ahead.
Do you know the number of notices that were sent out to residents around this project?
It was sent out to, the notice was sent to about 234 residents.
And none of them responded?
Yeah, none of them responded. No comments letters were received.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see none. Thank you. Do we have the applicant here? Go ahead and please state your name and address.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Scott Vincent, 1500 West Shaw Avenue, Suite 304, Fresno, California. I'm the design architect for this project.
representing my clients who are intending to develop it. Part of my background in the last 10 years, I've done over 10,000 apartments in 5 different states. So I've got a lot of experience in this. When we started laying out this property, there's the typical concerns that you get. One of the big things that homeowners worry about is, are you looking in my backyard? And if you really look at the way we organize the buildings, we have end walls of the buildings facing where single family are. The end walls don't have any windows. So we're minimizing where balconies and those types of things can intrude into the neighbors. The property is really a good choice of property. It's surrounded mostly by RS5 and RS4, which would actually let you develop to a density of 12 units per acre. We're going just a little bit to the next step, which is the RM1, which gets us to 16. We're under that amount. So we consider that a nice fit for the neighborhood. As you go through the project, we've also provided ample amounts of open space. It's something that is a new trend in apartment design. Part of it is that people don't want to just be locked in their apartment. They want outdoor activities to do. So in the pool area, we're providing arbors and barbecues and those types of amenities that will bring people out. We've done several projects and done analysis afterwards. We've gone and talked to residents, and they really appreciate the outside. There's one that we recently completed, Emerson Apartments out by Sierra Vista Mall, just the other side. And at night in the pool area, they'll have 50 or 60 people gathered, socializing. So it's a new type of living when you start doing these things. And part of the reason we kept the density that we did is to allow this to happen. We didn't want to get too large. We could have gone 3-story and still tried to maintain the open space, but we didn't think that that was a good fit for the neighborhood. Architecturally, if you look at the school that we held the meeting at, we blend in with it perfectly, so we think we fit into the neighborhood well. These are all, again, considerations in trying to be a good neighbor to the residential properties around us. We did hold a public hearing. We mailed notices to a 1,000-foot radius. So we went beyond the minimum that we would have been required to make sure that we covered everyone. Stayed there an hour, not a single person showed up. The fact that I think that you see that there's been notices mailed and no one has filed opposition to this makes me believe that it's not a huge concern in the area. And again, I think we're being a good fit. One advantage we do have is to the east of us, as a buffer, we have a ponding basin. So it's not like we're going to be intruding on anyone there. We've provided parking that's above the minimum that's required for us. We're just under 2 stalls per unit, which is, in my experience, a great ratio to have. Modern day society, we have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 3, you may have more than 2 cars. 1s, you may only have 1 car. It balances out to about 2. We realize that we don't have on-street parking available to us, and so making sure we have adequate parking on site is important to the marketability of the project and the long-term health of the project. We don't want people moving out because they don't have anywhere to park. On the other hand, the other advantage we get with it is that in anything, whether it's a subdivision or an apartment complex, not everyone's home at the same time. You have people that are food service workers that are gone in the evening. You have people that work graveyard. You have people that are there in the morning. So again, we think the parking ratio is adequate, and we think we're providing the amenities for a high-quality, gated community that will provide a different kind of housing option to people in that area. Right now, there's just not a lot of apartments out there. So that's what we think we're doing. At this point, I'm going to conclude my presentation and be available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Do we have questions?
I do.
Yes.
Has there been a study done as far as the impact that it's going to have, this new development is going to have in the school area?
Well, The school didn't file any kind of opposition to it. The school has adequate capacity to be able to absorb what we bring in, so we don't think that that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, any other questions? I see none. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and go to the public. Any members of the public who would like to speak in opposition, please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes. Anyone in opposition? Okay. Do we have any individuals on Zoom?
Yes.
Go ahead and let them speak. State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Cindy Vu. My address is on 6698 East Terrace Avenue. I don't recall receiving any notices that was mentioned earlier. The reason I know of this is I received the letter about this planning, so that's why I'm joining Zoom. I'm opposing the 64-unit multi-family residential complex as it may lead to more condensed traffic, honking, people yelling, crime, etc. This will also cause the real estate value for single-family homes around the area to go down due to lack of peaceful environment and the reasons that I mentioned earlier. I also work from home full-time, so the construction of the complex would be loud and disruptive for me until who knows when the development will be complete. So this is my opposition.
Thank you very much, Ms. Do we have any other individuals on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, miss.
Stephanie Relis, 2729 North Cypress. I just wanted to say, also like Cindy, I did not receive any first notice that a meeting was going to be held at the nearby school. So it's not fair to say no one has any issues with these apartments. There are also apartments being built right now just south of that area, right on the corner of Armstrong and Clinton. So more apartments for our area, more issues with traffic, construction, noise, etc., and possibly bringing down our property values as well. So I am in opposition of these apartments.
Thank you, miss. Do we have any other individuals?
That's all I have.
Thank you, Janice. We'll go ahead and now go to the public. Any individuals who would like to speak in support of the project, please approach the podium, state your name. You have 3 minutes. I see none in here. We'll go ahead and, how about Zoom? Do we have any individuals who would like to speak in support of the project?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close all public comments. The applicant, would you like to address some of these concerns that the public brought up?
Speaking out of experience, these are common misconceptions that occur about these apartment complexes. We did traffic studies on this. We did not meet the thresholds to go further with the study based on the trip generation of this. The reality of it is the maximum number of trips that we generate in the morning hours is under 50 and under 50 in the afternoon. So it's not huge traffic volume coming out of here. The other misconception is that everybody leaves an apartment complex at the same time. Well, they don't leave my subdivision at the same time. It's just not the behavior of people. People go to work at different times. So that's it. The statement about crime, I will tell you that we actually did a project in Tracy where the police department did a study of calls required per apartment versus per single-family residence. And on a 2-to-1 ratio, single-family residences had more calls for service than through 911 than did the apartments. If a project is well-maintained, well-managed, it's just not going to be the problem. And I speak from experience. I happen to live at Perrin and Hickory Hill, okay? Across the street from my subdivision, it's a custom subdivision, is the Cotswolds Apartments. Across the street from that is Dominion Heights. Just down the street is La Provence and Dominion Courtyard. Within a half-mile radius of my home, I have over 1,000 apartments. So I can speak from experience that if they're well done and well maintained, they're an asset to the neighborhood. Finally, about property values. MIT and Penn State both did studies that show that apartments just don't have that big of an impact to trigger a decline in property values. The reality of it is property values are based on a whole conglomeration of the value of the homes that are there, as well as other amenities such as shopping centers, job availability, transportation availability, entertainment availability. Those are all things that go into determining property values. And just because an apartment complex comes in does not necessarily mean that property values are going to drop. We feel that this is a project that's designed with a high standard to it. It's going to be an amenity to the community, and we don't think that the fears that are expressed are going to occur.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions? Are you, oh, yeah, awesome, yeah, that's fine. Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Jenna Chillingarian, 1234 O Street, Fresno. I was on the environmental consultant team for this project, and so some of these questions are questions about environmental impact, so I'm just going to address a few things. So with the school question that you had, there was an informational letter received from CUSD that stated for the purposes of their concerns, there's an impact fee that schools charge, for new construction, and so they just let the applicant know that this is the fee that will be assessed at the time of construction. But the environmental document did go a step further in looking at student generation rates based on the 2022 CUSD student generation rate schedule. And so based on that schedule, there would be 9 students that would be generated if the site was developed as is currently zoned and planned. So 9 students if it was a single-family development. Based on this development, we're looking at 8 students that would be generated from this development. So it's actually fewer students. And because the way that schools operate is, they look at the land uses and they calculate the number of students. So this is a residential land use, so it's comparable, going from multifamily to single family. And so it's already within and less than what they would have already accounted for in their school generation rates. So that's the school impact. For the environmental study, we also had a noise study done, and the noise study concluded that there would be no exterior or interior impacts. They would be less than significant. We do have a mitigation measure for construction, so there shall be no construction or ground bearing or vibration type of construction equipment within 25 feet of any structure. And that's a general standard that's coming from the general plan program EIR. And then we have another mitigation measure requiring sort of like insulation for the units to ensure that exterior noises don't have impact on the residents. So basically the noise found no significant impacts. There was a trip generation analysis done by a traffic engineer, and as Scott mentioned, no impacts there. They're generating very insignificant levels of traffic. I have that right here. So it was prepared, and they found that basically a TIS, a traffic impact study, would be required if there were 100 or more peak hour trips. And here, this project would not exceed 40 peak hour trips. So we're significantly below that threshold to require a traffic impact study. And then lastly, not really brought up here, but vehicle miles traveled is what CEQA looks at now. So our CEQA document also had a VMT analysis done by a traffic engineer, and we're way below all levels of significance for that. So those are some of those environmental concerns brought up, and I can answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? See none. Is 1234 a real address? Just joking around. All right, let's go. We'll go ahead and close all public comments. let's bring this back to the commission. Do we have any comments or motions from the commission?
I'll move to approve the staff's recommendations.
I'll second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now go to ID 231123. It's a workshop regarding the multi-jurisdictional housing element.
Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me, could we take a brief break, just a 5-minute break?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. 7:27. Let's go ahead and resume the meeting at 7:33. Thank you.
Yes. You should have, just let me know. There isn't any, you can have this.
I'm wearing some height too. I think I'll move it up here so that I can have my notes here.
All right, everyone, it's 7:33. We'll go ahead and resume the meeting. Thank you for the
Okay.
patience.
Of course. Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Sophia Pagalatis with the Long Range Planning Division of Planning and Development.
Sophia, I'm going to
Yes.
pause you. You guys are mute in chambers. Can you please unmute yourself?
Oh,
Thank you, sorry.
okay. I'll do it again for the record. Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Sophia Pagalatis of the Long Range Planning Division in the Planning and Development Department. And tonight we have a workshop on the multi-jurisdictional housing element for you. And I would like to introduce our housing element consultant who is going to provide the presentation this evening. It is Ms. Chelsea Payne, who is the Director of Urban Planning with Ascent, a consulting firm out of Sacramento. Chelsea has over 70 housing elements under her belt, has extensive experience in housing elements, and it's a really interesting field with all of the changes that are happening now in California. So then she and I are available to answer questions, and this item was intended to be open to public comment, so if there is anyone who wants to have comments on this item, we ask that you entertain those. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Payne.
All right, thank you very much, Sophia. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. As Sophia said, my name is Chelsea Payne, Director of Urban Planning with Ascent, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to present this milestone publication of your housing element. Tonight's agenda, I'm going to start with a high-level overview of the housing element and how the draft housing element is organized. I'm going to discuss the city's housing target, which is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or the RHNA, R-H-N-A for short. I'm going to talk about one of the most significant new requirements for this housing element, which is the requirement to address fair housing. And then I'm going to highlight the housing implementation programs and some of the key programs in your housing action plan. And then I will wrap up with a discussion of next steps. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to talk about the draft housing element that was published just last week for a 30-day public review. And we're here tonight to get input from the Planning Commission and members of the public before we submit the housing element to the state for their review for compliance with state law. So very quickly, brief overview of what the housing element is. The housing element is a required element or chapter of the city's general plan, and it's the plan to meet the housing needs of all community members, and also a plan to accommodate the city's fair share of the future regional housing need for households at all income levels. Every city and county in California is required to adopt a housing element and to update it every 8 years according to a schedule that's set in state law. The adoption deadline for the city's housing element is December 31st, 2023, and we're going to be doing our best to get it as close to that deadline as we can. Unlike other elements of the general plan, there are very detailed requirements in state law for what has to be addressed in the housing element. Two of the key components are demonstrating that the city has adequate land to meet its housing target, and that means providing for zoning for a variety of densities. Another key component is the housing plan, and that's the goals, the objectives, and meaningful actions to support the development and preservation of safe, decent, and affordable housing for all members of the community. The housing element is the only element of the general plan that's reviewed and certified by the state for compliance with state law, and the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, is the state department that's responsible for that compliance review. Because the city is participating in a regional multi-jurisdictional housing element update process, the first part of the city's housing element is the regional chapters that address issues and opportunities countywide. All of the participating jurisdictions will be adopting these regional chapters, including a set of regional goals and policies. And then each jurisdiction has its own local appendix. So the city of Fresno is considered Appendix 1E. You can see how the local appendix is organized, starting with just a high-level summary of some of the needs and conditions from that regional needs assessment. Section 1 is the action plan. That's really the heart of the housing element. Those are the implementation programs that the city will be implementing going forward. There's a detailed sites inventory, a local assessment of fair housing that supplements the regional assessment of fair housing in the main regional document. There's a look at all potential constraints to housing production, an evaluation of your past accomplishments, a summary of all of the public outreach and engagement that's happened to date, and then the very last section are the detailed sites inventory tables. Here's a look at the overall project schedule. We kicked off the project about a year ago with community engagement, both at the regional level as part of the multi-jurisdictional effort, and at the local level here in Fresno with community workshops that were held in neighborhoods around the city. At the same time as all of that community input was being gathered, we were conducting analysis and preparing the chapters of the housing element. And then, as I mentioned last week, the city published the draft element for the 30-day public review, which will take us into August. During the 30-day public review, we are here tonight meeting with the Planning Commission. We're scheduled to meet with the City Council tomorrow night, and there will also be a series of community workshops that I'm going to highlight in just a moment. Following public review, we will be revising the housing element in response to public comments, any direction from the Planning Commission and City Council, and then we will submit the revised housing element to HCD for their review. The state has 90 days to conduct their initial review, which will result in a comment letter from the state. We'll then be revising the housing element and resubmitting it to the state for a second review. And if we're able to satisfy HCD within that next review period, we could expect to be presenting the housing element at adoption hearings as early as January of 2024. However, it's more likely that HCD is going to take longer to find the housing element in compliance. This has been the case for every jurisdiction across the state during this 6-cycle update. There are just so many new requirements in state law, and HCD is taking a much stronger stance on issues around fair housing. And so the more likely schedule is that we'll still be working with HCD to resolve their comments into the first quarter of 2024, with adoption hearings sometime in late spring. So that tells you what to expect going forward. In addition to the regional focus group meetings and stakeholder consultations that were done as part of the multi-jurisdictional housing element, the city worked with several community partners under a separate contract to conduct neighborhood-level workshops to really get the word out about this project out into the neighborhoods. In all, the city held 15 community meetings during 2 rounds of workshops in the fall of 2022 and then in the spring of 2023. And the city provided interpretation services in Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi. In all, about 250 people participated. The community shared a lot of thoughts on major housing issues, and there were a lot of great ideas for actions to include in the housing element. And all of this is summarized in section 6 of the local appendix. And as you read that section, you'll see that a lot of these ideas are captured in the housing programs in section 1. The planning department will be hosting a series of 6 workshops over the next couple of weeks at the locations that are shown here. The workshops are all going to cover the same topic, so there's really only a need to attend one of the workshops. But they're all going to be held on different dates at different times, so you can pay close attention to the details of each meeting. The first one will be tomorrow night at the West Side Church of God on California Avenue starting at 5:30. Next, I'm going to talk about the regional housing needs allocation. This is the city's assigned housing target. It's a production target for the housing element update planning period. So here in California, housing needs are assessed at the regional level based on projected population growth and several other factors. A regional housing target, or it's called a determination, is assigned by the state to every region. And HCD assigned the Fresno region over 58,000 housing units to be accommodated over the roughly 8-year planning period. Once the regional determination is made, then the Fresno Council of Governments is tasked with developing a methodology to distribute that regional need to all of the jurisdictions within the region. And this process is called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or the RHNA. Once assigned, each city and county is then responsible for preparing a housing element to show how you can accommodate your housing target. Based on the final methodology adopted by the Council of Governments, the City of Fresno's portion of that regional housing need is 36,866 housing units, or about 63% of the total countywide housing determination. And you can see here how the RHNA is distributed among all jurisdictions in the county.
So can you provide a little bit more insight on how those allocations are divvied up? Is it based on available land, or is it based on projected population growth, or is it everything, all of the above?
It's, the distribution is based on a lot of different factors. Population growth being one of them. Often they look at job projections, availability of transit, fair housing indicators. There are a lot of different factors that go into that, many of which are required under state law. There's a formula that the COG has to follow, and the COG needs to demonstrate to the state that they're consistent with the state's objectives for promoting infill, proximity to transit, affirmatively furthering fair housing, all of these different factors. So given that Fresno is the metropolitan center of the county, it's not surprising that the city has such a large share, given also the rural nature of a lot of the other incorporated communities.
Thank you.
So this housing target is broken down by the income levels that are shown here based on area median income. This slide also shows the RHNA for this planning period compared to the previous planning period. That's shown to the left. It's about over 50% higher for this next housing element update. The city's lower income RHNA, which is the very low income and low income housing targets combined, is about 41% of the total RHNA. And these are the income categories that are typically the hardest to meet, so a lot of attention in the housing element goes into how the city is meeting the lower income RHNA. The housing element contains a detailed inventory of vacant and underutilized non-vacant sites where housing can be built. We start this process by looking at the previous housing element and sites that were included in that inventory that have not yet been built on and are still available. We then looked for new sites to include in the inventory. Particularly, we looked at non-vacant sites along the city's mixed-use corridor, where just last year the city made zoning text amendments to really help facilitate more housing on mixed-use corridors. So there's an emphasis on identifying non-vacant opportunity sites there. The city also gets to count a reasonable projection of the number of accessory dwelling units that can be expected to be built. That has to be based on recent trends in ADU production. And then we count any units that are in the pipeline. So this includes entitled multifamily developments and final subdivision maps for single-family lots. We add all of this capacity together to determine if the city has adequate zoning to meet the RHNA. And we classify each site in the inventory by income level. According to state law, 30 units per acre is the default density standard for metropolitan jurisdictions like Fresno. So that means if the zoning for a site allows 30 units per acre, you can count it as a lower income opportunity site. That doesn't mean that a developer has to build lower income housing on the site. It just means that the site is deemed to have an adequate density to provide opportunity for affordable housing to be built, and it can be included in your lower income inventory. The city has several zoning districts that allow 30 units per acre that are shown here on the bottom right of the slide in dark orange. This includes the multifamily zones RM2 and RM3, several downtown zones, and then mixed use and commercial zones where the city promotes housing. Middle density zoning districts like the RM1 and RMMH, which allow low density multifamily and mobile homes, those are counted toward the moderate income category. We also count approved market rate housing in the moderate income category based on analysis that shows that market rents in Fresno are generally affordable to moderate income households. And then all of the sites that are zoned for single family and all of the approved single family subdivisions are accounted in the above moderate income category. So here's a map of all of the sites in the inventory. I know it's very hard to see here at this scale, but what you'll notice is that we're only counting sites within current city limits. We're not trying to count any sites that would require annexation. It's one of the things in the inventory is you have to rely on sites that are available at the start of the planning period to be built with housing. Generally, what you also see is that there are a lot of small parcels in the downtown and in older parts of the city, and then larger parcels in the newer growth areas at the fringe. There are a lot of mixed-use sites that are shown in purple along the major corridors like Kings Canyon Road, Shaw Avenue, and at the future Shaw Avenue Town Center within the West Area neighborhood-specific plan boundary. So after adding up the capacity in pipeline projects, vacant and underutilized sites, and a projection of accessory dwelling units, the housing element demonstrates adequate capacity to meet the RHNA at all income levels, with about a 30% buffer in the lower and above moderate income categories, and then just enough capacity in the moderate income category. So next I'm going to talk about one of the most significant new requirements, I would say the most significant new requirement of this housing element, which is the obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. This is a new requirement that was enacted in 2018 with the passage of Assembly Bill 686. AB 686 adds several new requirements to the housing element, but it also more broadly affects the policies and programs of all public agencies in California. Now with this bill, all public agencies must administer housing and community development programs in a manner that affirmatively furthers fair housing, or AFFH for short. And this means taking meaningful actions to combat discrimination, overcome patterns of segregation, and foster inclusive communities where everyone has equal access to opportunities. In the housing element, we're required to prepare a fair housing assessment that analyzes trends related to segregation and integration based on income, race and ethnicity, disability, and familial status. We look at disproportionate housing needs for different groups related to overcrowding, overpayment, incidents of homelessness, and substandard housing conditions. We have to analyze disparities in access to opportunity, such as access to transit, jobs, a healthy environment, and well-performing schools. And there are a lot of other relevant factors that go into that fair housing assessment. We also have to analyze the location of the sites in the site's inventory relative to all of these fair housing factors. And then based on the findings from the fair housing assessment, cities and counties are required to adopt implementation programs that will produce meaningful results in moving the needle on the fair housing issues. So I'm going to highlight some of the high-level findings from the city's fair housing assessment, and particularly the assessment of the location of the sites. There are 40 census tracts in the city that are designated as racially concentrated areas of poverty, or RECAPs for short. RECAPs are generally in more central parts of the city, and the housing element identifies capacity for nearly 14,000 housing units in these RECAP areas. This includes 8,155 units in the lower income category, 937 in the moderate, and over 4,800 in the above moderate income category. So about 41% of your lower income capacity, 17% of moderate, and 24% of the above moderate income capacity. And so the reason that there's a large proportion of the lower income RENA in areas classified as RECAPs is because of city policies to encourage high-density housing close to the central core of the city in proximity to jobs and transit. So those are great planning principles, great policies, but to comply with fair housing, you also have to make sure that we're balancing that with providing opportunities for lower income housing in other parts of the city. There are 17 census tracts that are classified as racially concentrated areas of affluence. These are areas generally with higher incomes and larger than average percentage of white non-Hispanic households. They're mostly within the sphere of influence, unincorporated islands, and new growth areas north of Nice Avenue. There isn't too much capacity for housing. These are shown as RCAA up on the slide. There isn't too much capacity for new housing in these areas, but most of what is available is single-family zone land counted in the above moderate income capacity. About a third of the census tracts in the city are classified as areas of high segregation and poverty, and another 11% are classified as low resource areas. About 40% of the city, the high segregation and poverty are shown in yellow and low resource in that light green color. About 40% are high and highest resource, shown in the darker blue colors. What you can see is a lot of the high and highest resource overlap with the unincorporated areas around the city. Over half of the above moderate income housing capacity, about 52%, is in low resource areas and areas of high segregation and poverty. And this creates opportunities to balance the concentration of poverty in these areas with higher income housing. But on the flip side of that, about 23% of the lower income housing capacity is in high and highest resource areas, compared to 37% of the above moderate income capacity. And this is largely because of the predominance of single-family zoning in neighborhoods north of Shaw Avenue. So one of the most significant programs in the housing element to address this issue is Program 2. I would encourage you to look closely at that program. It focuses on expanding opportunities for lower and moderate income housing in high and highest resource areas. And one of the reasons that this is really important is that the state is really prioritizing funding for affordable housing in these high and highest resource areas. Those areas are going to compete better for state funding. Um, 77 census tracts in the city, or over half of the city, are considered susceptible to displacement risk according to a methodology from the Urban Displacement Project. This is largely due to the lower incomes of households in these areas combined with rising rents. So looking at displacement risk and disproportionate housing needs, what we see is a need for tenant protections to prevent eviction and displacement, a need for deeply affordable housing that matches the extremely low and very low income of households in these areas, and accessible units for seniors and people with disabilities. So that's a high-level overview of the findings of the Fair Housing Assessment. It's a very dense chapter with a lot of demographic analysis and a really important new requirement for this housing element. Next, I'm going to talk about the Housing Action Plan and highlight some of the key programs. This is section 1 of the local appendix. The housing element includes 7 goals 48 policies, and 34 implementation programs. There are 16 new programs that were added in response to new state laws, from extensive community input, and recommendations from other plans and strategies, namely the One Fresno Housing Strategy. And here are the 7 goals under which the policies and programs are organized. The first 6 goals are included in the Regional Goals and Policies chapter that all of the participating jurisdictions are adopting. And then Goal 7, which is focused on preventing displacement and homelessness, was added as a local goal with a local set of policies that are specific to the city of Fresno. So I'm going to go through each of the goal sections here, and I'm going to be highlighting the programs that are in bold. If I were to go through each of the programs, we'd probably be here for another hour or two, so I'm just going to touch on those that are highlighted here. First, Program 1 is about tracking development activity to make sure that the city is maintaining adequate capacity to meet the RENA during the entire 8-year planning period. State law changed a few years ago, and the law now requires jurisdictions to track development activity on all of the lower and moderate income housing sites. And if the city receives a development application on these sites for fewer units or at a higher income level than what was assumed in the housing element, the city has to make findings when approving these applications that there's sufficient capacity on the remaining sites in the lower income and moderate income inventory. So that's why it's important to build in a surplus, a buffer of capacity, because we know that not all of these high density sites are going to be built with affordable housing. As market rate projects are approved, you're going to have to do the accounting to make sure that you still have adequate sites. If at any point during the 8 years you fall below the threshold of having adequate lower income sites, the city has 180 days to find and make available a replacement site. So a lot more accounting and tracking has to happen during this housing element planning period. Program 2 specifically addresses the fair housing issues of access to opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, a larger portion of the lower income housing sites are in areas considered low resource or concentrated areas of poverty compared to the above moderate income housing sites. So Program 2 commits the city to creating capacity for an additional 750 units of higher density or lower income housing in high and highest resource areas. The program also commits to developing zoning to allow missing middle housing and multi-unit housing in currently single-family neighborhoods with the objective of 400 units. Program 3 encourages the development of accessory dwelling units through pre-approved ADU plans, informational materials and public education, and partnerships with local builders. The objective is at least 94 ADUs, which is the number we're counting in the inventory. Program 4 contains several actions to streamline the development review process, including developing a preliminary application form consistent with Senate Bill 330, establishing a written procedure for Senate Bill 35, which requires ministerial approval for certain projects, and a commitment to establishing a non-discretionary review process for certain types of housing applications. And then the last program I'll highlight here is Program 8. There were several changes in state law related to the site's inventory, including how you treat lower income sites that were used in previous housing element inventories. If the city wants to continue to include the inventory sites that were included previously as lower income sites, the city must amend the zoning to allow by right approval of housing developments that include 20% affordable housing. And in the detailed sites inventory table in Section 7, we identify which lower income sites were included previously. So I'll move on to goals section 2. The programs in this section are focused on providing affordable housing for lower income households. And there are a lot of new programs in this section based on public input and recommendations from the One Fresno Housing Strategy. I'll highlight Program 11. This relates to the use of the city's recently established Local Housing Trust Fund, which was set up to support the development of affordable housing. The program calls for annually releasing a notice of funding with an objective of leveraging $24 million in funds during the planning period. Program 14 sets a goal of establishing a local land bank by 2029 that could acquire land for affordable housing. Program 15 supports establishing a community land trust with an emphasis on acquiring affordable housing in areas at risk of displacement and acquiring land in high resource areas for new housing construction. And then Program 16 relates to the use of surplus public lands for affordable housing. The program calls for releasing 1 to 2 surplus sites each year for affordable housing development and for considering depositing some or all of funds from the sale into the local housing trust fund. I'm going to jump around here on the next slide and just touch on goals 3 and 6. The next 2 goal sections relate to housing and neighborhood preservation, as well as energy conservation and sustainable development. I'll just highlight Program 21, which is about providing lower-income homeowners with access to funds to repair their homes. The city has a senior exterior repair program that provides grants to seniors, and the city also provides funds to nonprofits for home rehab programs. The next goal sections 4 and 5 relate to special needs housing and fair and equal housing opportunities. I'll highlight Program 24, which includes a long list of development code amendments to bring the code into compliance with state law. Specifically, it calls for updating the density bonus and ADU ordinances, reducing parking requirements for certain special housing types, permitting low barrier navigation centers by right in mixed use zones. These are a type of homeless shelter. And it also calls for permitting group homes without a use permit in residential zones. This is something the state is requiring of all jurisdictions across the state. Goal 5, which is providing fair and equal housing opportunities. It's a very important goal for this housing element. While there are only 2 programs specifically housed in this section, fair housing is really a lens through which we looked at all of the programs, and I'm going to discuss that more in just a minute at the end. And then the 7th and final goal section is about preventing displacement and homelessness. Program 30 is about seeking funds to maintain the emergency rental assistance program. 31 is the city's eviction protection program, which protects against unlawful evictions. And 33 contains a number of strategies to address homelessness, including funding for shelters, establishing a reserve fund for operations, and supporting the voucher incentive program, which recruits landlords to house families experiencing homelessness. I mentioned a moment ago that fair housing is a theme woven throughout. Here, at the very end of the fair housing assessment is the summary of the key fair housing issues and contributing factors, and then a list of all of the programs that have a fair housing component to address those issues. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but each of these programs was written through a lens of trying to address the key fair housing issues identified. I'll conclude with just next steps in the process. I mentioned that tomorrow night the City Council is scheduled to receive a presentation. There's also the first community workshop, and then we'll be taking all of that feedback, revising the element, and submitting it to the state for review. So over the next 6 to 9 months, we'll be working closely with the state on bringing this into compliance. So with that, I'll just leave up here some resources, which are links to where you can find the housing element document, as well as staff contacts. So thank you very much for your patience. I know there's a lot of information here. There's a lot in the housing element, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and go to the public. Do we have any members from the public who would like to speak? Anyone on Zoom?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close all public comments. Bring it back to the commission. Do we have any comments or motion from the commission?
I do have one comment, Mr. Moderator. This may be a little off guard, but it is my oldest daughter's 12th birthday right now. As we speak, they are wrapping up their get-together. And my fellow commissioner said something I thought would be kind of cool. I don't know if it's too late, but if you all wouldn't mind so that I could be able to sleep in my bed with my wife at home tonight, if we could just do a quick video saying happy birthday to my baby, that would be great. I don't know if that's out of line, Brother Moderator, but if it's not, Jennifer, I would love it.
We absolutely can do that. Do you have any comments on the housing element before we do that?
Just in case we don't do this video, I may need a house to stay in.
Okay. You are welcome to stay in my home.
I love you.
day.
I love you.
All right, do we have I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion.
We don't need to make a motion. It's just a presentation tonight, and there will be an opportunity for you to make a motion on the final document.
Perfect. So if any of the public, they have, because the presentation will go to the city council tomorrow too, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if the public, if they want to participate in that too, feel free to tomorrow. Do we have any reports from the secretary? All right, so, go ahead.
I would like to thank you, Chelsea. I think you did a phenomenal job.
Great job, sis.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, if he does need a place to stay, then hopefully. So I'll go ahead and kick off on the count to 3. Do you just want to sing a happy birthday?
Yeah, if someone can just record on that'd be great.
We can
Faith.
just
My
go
daughter's
back, one
name
of
is
you guys do it so you can get the whole group.
Can I give this to you, brother? Got it. Yeah, my fate is in your hands.
We are with you in Zoom too, Commissioner.
Anybody want to join?
So what we're going to do is on the count of 3, we'll sing happy birthday to...
Wait. They have to come up.
Okay.
Quickly, quick.
And if anyone's a good singer, you can take my microphone too.
Oh, I heard you sing before, brother. The masked singer, that was you, man.
All right, guys, you guys ready? On the count of 3, we're going to sing happy birthday to Miss Faith.
Faith. Her name is Faith.
Faith. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Faith. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, guys.
Happy birthday, Miss Faith. Thank you, everyone. It's currently 8:11. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Everyone, have a wonderful night. Thank you.
I have a whole side of my house that we don't even go in.